receiver in the end zone. Touchdown, Notre Dame! Somehow, the Irish did it!
Out of the pack, 30, 35, goodbye, baby! At the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10, five, rocket touchdown, Irish!
Zibikowski looking for a block. Touch to the right to the 40. Gets a block, gets to the 45, 50. Up to the 45, 40, 30. 1 minute to beat. 20, 15, 10. He's down to the 5. Touchdown, Irish!
Well, I am back. Fighting Irish Faithful 2021, the Spring Football Buffet. It's so great to be back with everybody right now. Really late after the spring game. Definitely long overdue, but I said I'd be back, and I'm back. Before we get started, if you're new, welcome. This is the Fighting Irish Faithful show, Season 2. We survived Season 1 during COVID. I think we'll be around for Season 2. And let's get going. So where we left off last time was with Notre Dame losing to Alabama. We'll move beyond that. People have graduated. People are now in the NFL, whatnot. We got new freshmen going in and whatnot. But hey, it's time to start the new podcast season. Tonight, we're drinking Maker's Mark bourbon. Yes, I know. I normally drink scotch during my podcast, but hey, we're going to do Makers, and for a couple reasons. The main reason is that we just had the Kentucky Derby, and the doc, her favorite bourbon is Maker's Mark. She's actually responsible for why I like whiskey, and Maker's Mark is her favorite bourbon, so there you go. But also, there is a connection to scotch, and my favorite scotch, which is Lafroig. Lafroig, their barrels are actually born out of Maker's Mark. The Maker's Mark barrels, after they produce Maker's Mark bourbon, get shipped over to Scotland, and they then are refurbished, and the whiskey and what's part of the oak that was bourbon now goes into making Lafroig Scotch whiskey. So there is a connection to the scotch there. We just celebrated Mother's Day, so the toast this episode is to our mothers. I hope you called your mother, sent her flowers, gave her a hug, and all that. So toast to all mothers and Notre Dame, Our Lady, our mother. Anyway, if you're new to the show, welcome. As I said, this is the Fighting Irish Faithful podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at faithful_Irish, and on Spotify, iTunes, all of those places. You can even ask your smart speaker, say that 10 times fast, smart speaker, Alexa, Google, whatnot, and they will also play the Fighting Irish Faithful show. I've been absent for a while, and there's a couple reasons for that, but I was silent for a while, but I'm back causing problems. Quite frankly, Notre Dame football, though very important in my life, is very compartmentalized to really the season and any other major events. The spring game I would count as a major event. Duh. And that's pretty much it. The rest of the year, not so much. I don't follow other Notre Dame sports, lacrosse, baseball, hockey. Hockey would probably be the only one I would follow, but again, I'd rather follow the NHL. That's just me. And so that's that. I'm not going to get into it. I will follow Gonzaga basketball, but that's because that's where I met the doc and where I went to undergrad. But I'm not going to come on here in the off season, talk about Notre Dame football, talk about recruiting, and basically regurgitate what I've already told you, or just regurgitate the press clippings from your favorite Notre Dame football blog, or be a broken record and talk about the same things over and over again. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give you my fresh perspective and try to bring some stats and numbers and things. And it's hard to do stats and numbers when Notre Dame's not playing football. I mentioned Gonzaga basketball earlier. There was a little bit of similarity to Notre Dame football this past season. Backstory, I got my undergraduate degree from Gonzaga. My wife is from Spokane. That's where we met. I have good fond memories of GU. And this year was very, very exciting for the Zags. Second time in the last 4 years making it to the championship game. And with COVID and all of that stuff, the tournament was exclusively in Indianapolis, where I live. So it was quite fitting to see the Zags go all the way to the finals. Very exciting. Doc and I did fork out a significant amount of money to go to the game. And that was not very fun. It was a fun experience to go. Don't get me wrong. I have no regrets, but it was a death bucket game for the Zags. If you're a Zags fan, it's like you're a chipmunk crawling into a bucket you think is full of sunflower seeds, and you dunk yourself and you die. This is just like what has happened to Notre Dame multiple times. Most recently, I think in 2017, where we went down to Miami at Hard Rock Stadium and lost by 30 points or something like that. It was terrible. Did not see that coming. And then also in 2012, when Notre Dame went to the national title game and got their ass kicked by Alabama. This past season, yes, Notre Dame did get boat raced by Alabama, but go back to my later episodes of last season. Right before that game, I said there's no way that Notre Dame is going to beat Alabama, and I had my reasons for that. The Gonzaga game reminds me of the Notre Dame death buckets, and there's an old podcast you could go to. I'm not going to mention them here, but those who are really savvy, they will be very familiar with the death bucket reference to another podcast that has also kind of inspired this one. So as we drink bourbon tonight, there was some pain with Gonzaga losing, and it kind of brought up some of the Notre Dame pain from the past. So there's a little bit of spring practice I'm going to talk about here, and let's just get straight into it. So, I'm not going to talk about all the spring practice. It's all done, said right now. It's all Notre Dame propaganda and whatnot. They're only showing you bits and pieces of the team, bits and pieces of, this cool pass to the corner, and Matt Salerno did this, and oh man, look at the new freshman defensive backs, and that's like 2 plays out of however many plays and however many sessions. Probably practice is pretty boring, and guys are just running around hitting each other. And as a fan, unless you're really hardcore or you coach a high school team or something, that's not very exciting. And I'm not going to come here and talk about that. But one thing I am going to talk about is of what Notre Dame has been showing is they've been showing a lot of their assistant coaches. And some of it makes sense, like Marcus Freeman, their new defensive coordinator, very, very much appropriate, very fitting to bring him on board. Go back to last season. Again, I said he was the best possible defensive coordinator hire Notre Dame could possibly have after Clark Lee left and took the Vanderbilt job. So bringing Marcus Freeman in and featuring him, I get that. That makes sense. He's a new guy. He's fresh. He's the hottest defensive hire in all of college football, and Notre Dame was very fortunate and very smart to get him. So praise to Notre Dame. Good job for that. But a lot of these, they've been featuring Coach Reese, Brian Polian, and all the other coaches. But I haven't seen featurettes of them featuring the head coach, Brian Kelly. Why? Why are they not featuring Brian Kelly? Very quiet, kind of in the shadow. This is surprising. Someone who, over the last 4 years, has over an 80% win percentage. Why would you not be featuring that and going out and saying that? I really don't know. But then there's all this talk of relationships over systems. What does that mean? Relationships over systems. Yeah, okay, I get maybe from a recruiting standpoint or from a team building thing, you want to have relationships over systems, but I don't know how many points you get for relationships on a scoreboard in a Rose Bowl game. Usually if you have a good offensive or defensive system or whatnot, you end up winning the game. So, yeah, that's a jab right there, but I don't know what that means when our assistant coaches are tweeting out to recruits relationships over assistants. So, hey, respect, but hey, it is what it is. So, but we're getting recruits. We got some decent recruits, but there's nothing better for recruiting than winning. If you win big games and you win against other people, you're going to get the talented. You're going to get the good recruits. I don't know if Alabama is talking about relationships or anything of that nature over systems. They're just winning and hoisting trophies left and right. Notre Dame's also been doing a lot of propaganda, I think, and advertising, and they've been putting billboards, literally massive billboards that you would normally see for Lexus or Chevy, or back in the day, the good old days, you would see the Marlboro Man on the side of the freeway. Of course, you don't see that anymore. Maybe there's a good reason for that. But Notre Dame is putting out giant billboards of their current players in places like Chicago, Los Angeles, and whatnot. And it's basically saying, hey, I am from Chicago and I chose Notre Dame. And that's cool. And I have no problem with that. Hey, it's your money. You spend it how you want to spend it. I don't think Alabama's doing that. Again, they're just winning, and naturally success is attracting more and more talent to their program. So maybe it's a new strategy. Who knows? I admire the creativity, but I will see the effectiveness of this. At the end of the day, Notre Dame continues to disappoint me. At the end of last season, we did not win our two big games, the ACC championship and, of course, the playoff game again. Unfortunately, Brian Kelly does not, after 10 seasons, still does not have a major win of significance under his belt. No Rose Bowl, no national championship, nothing. And I'm not going to beat him up too much because I've given him a lot of hard criticism for that. But he does deserve a little bit of praise. An 84.3% win percentage in just the last 4 years since going 4-8 in 2016, where I thought he should have been fired. And his whole career as a total at Notre Dame is a 72% win percentage, which is very good. But again, to what do we gain if you go the entire season without actually reaching the summit or winning a Rose Bowl? Let's put it in perspective another way, fans. Notre Dame last season, 2019, they beat Iowa State very soundly in the Cheez-It Bowl or the Camping World Bowl, whatever it was. Iowa State this past year won a major bowl game. I think they won the Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame has still not done that, and Matt Campbell has been at Iowa State in less time with less talent from the Big 12, what have you, than Notre Dame. So, look, take that for what it is. There are multiple coaches who have won at least one of those major games in that amount of time. And maybe it's not Brian Kelly's fault. We'll get into more of that later. But that's just something to think about. At the end of the day, I don't want Notre Dame to become the Buffalo Bills of college football, going to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and never winning the Super Bowl. Like, I don't want Notre Dame to be the Buffalo Bills. Or maybe they have been the Buffalo Bills ever since 1993 because they haven't won anything of significance. The last major bowl game they won was in 1994 in the versus the Cotton Bowl. So maybe the problem is not Brian Kelly. Maybe the problem is actually Notre Dame itself, which is ironic because I'm wearing a sweatshirt and a hat that says Notre Dame, and I'm doing a Notre Dame podcast. I'm saying Notre Dame is the problem of why they're not winning the title. There are things I think that go on at the university that maybe feed into the stew of settling or just distraction or whatnot. And there's two things I want to talk about. The first thing is the shirt. And my wife actually has a throwback of the very first shirt, but in sweatshirt form. And she bought it last time we were at a game up there. I own, I think, at least 3, but I don't think I've bought a single shirt since 2015. Just because I haven't cared for the designs and it just hasn't been that good. Now, this year's shirt is green, and I like the green. It's like a Kelly green, and the logo and the saying on the front is good. But the back confuses me. First off, there's just way too much going on. And yeah, there's some Easter eggs here and there, and there's the dome and all of that. But there's 3 dudes on the back. One is the leprechaun, and then there's 2 other guys. Now, I am not going to go into great detail about this, but when I look at the back of the shirt, I kind of think that I'm seeing Tommy Smith and John Carlos. If you don't know who those 2 guys are, go look it up. I kind of feel like that's what I'm seeing when I see the shirt. And that's not to be controversial, but that's what I'm reminded. I saw that, and that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, oh, that's those two guys from 1968. And maybe that has something to do with current events. Is Notre Dame trying to be sensitive to that sort of thing going on right now? I don't know, but that was my reaction. But regardless of any other underlying event going on in the committee that designs the shirt, but say that is going on, why would you confuse us with all this, crazy, stuff in the shirt? There's too much going on. It's too busy. Just a simple, clear, crisp design is better. If you really wanted to make a statement, Notre Dame, I suggest this. And it would look, number one, dope, and it would make the student section look that much more intimidating if you could make Notre Dame Stadium a more intimidating place. I won't get into the stadium experience quite yet. Just make the shirt black. We've never had a black t-shirt. Make the shirt black. Black color, very simple, and then just put in gold or green on the front, Notre Dame or Fighting Irish, the leprechaun, the monogram, anything. Just a black shirt with gold and white or green lettering, whatever. It says Fighting Irish, black shirt. I would buy that. That would be dope. I would say the shirt 2021, that would be awesome. I actually think it would be kind of intimidating to see this wave of black shirts in the crowd of all the students, and a lot of the stadium would look that way. I think it would look cool. Like, that's just my opinion, right? So if you're going to send a message, Notre Dame, make the shirt black, but keep it very simple. Don't have all this busyness and then some other hidden meanings in it. I don't know if that's what's going on, but that's what I saw when I saw the shirt this year. The second thing I think that may be an issue at Notre Dame that's a distraction, or even worse, Notre Dame is settling for less than excellence. Why am I attracted to Notre Dame? It's because I believe Notre Dame, what it stands for is excellence, integrity, and all these other things. But I want my team to win, and I demand them to hire coaches and recruit players, but do it in an ethical way and whatnot. But I'm seeing, and this happened in 2012. In 2012, the bookstore printed undefeated shirts after Notre Dame went 12-0 before they played Alabama in the national championship game. And I remember seeing this, like, what the hell is this? This is stupid. We still have one more game. And then we get boat raced by 28 points. We lose. Very depressing. Unfortunately, I remember that night too well. And here we are. I saw on Twitter, and I'm not going to blast this person. This person works for the university in the athletic department or their public relations, whatever. I don't know. But this person posted a sign that says, hey, new sign in the Goog, the student, the football building, the football practice building. In the Goog, undefeated season 2020, and they had the scores of all the games. We did not go undefeated last year. We went 10-2. We lost the last two games by very large margins. Why the hell is Notre Dame putting up a undefeated sign? This is not like a 8x10, piece of paper by the drinking fountain or around the corner from the men's restroom. No, this is a large poster, corporate size propaganda, messaging that's out there. It says Notre Dame 2020 undefeated season. We did not do that. That's completely ridiculous. So which I tweeted out to this person who has connections to Kentucky basketball and Florida State football, I found out. So they probably, their allegiance to the Fighting Irish is probably low. But regardless, this is garbage. Why is Notre Dame putting up such a sign? I don't get it. So, again, maybe it's not Kelly why Notre Dame is not reaching the summit. Maybe it's Notre Dame as a whole settling for less, not demanding excellence, too many distractions, hidden messages in the shirt. Who knows? Not that really influences the play on the field, but it certainly doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help. So Notre Dame spring game, always fun. Always looking forward to the spring game. The blue team beats the gold team 17-3. Although the gold team was not wearing gold jerseys, they were wearing white, but Notre Dame's blue and gold. Okay, you get it. No one thought that was funny on Twitter either, so here we are. But though the spring game is always fun, it's always dialed down to about 5, and it's a glorified practice.
We talking about practice.
It's a practice. It's and the intensity is low. They don't have live kickoffs and all these other things. So now every now and then you see something good. You see a spark from a player, or someone has kind of a breakout thing. I remember Lewis Nix took a snap once, and he played quarterback and scored a touchdown in the spring game. That was a good memory, and may Lewis Nix rest in peace, one of my favorite Notre Dame players of all time. But there's really nothing you can conclude from this glorified practice that is the spring game, other than who you don't see or who underperforms or underwhelms you. Specifically, Jordan Johnson did not see any receptions from that poor guy. And then Braden Lindsey, though, had 5 receptions for 88 yards. Again, nothing that really, blows my skirt up. So it was good to see the quarterbacks. It was good to see Cohen and Tyler Buckner and Drew Pine. Clearly, this is setting up for a quarterback controversy through into fall camp in the summer. But you know what? Usually Notre Dame does really well when they have a fresh new quarterback. I haven't done that analysis yet. I'll do that in the fall. But a fresh new quarterback for Notre Dame is definitely going to be a good thing for Notre Dame always. But the overall stats of the game are a little confusing to me. It's very apparent that Notre Dame wanted to have more of a quarterback-focused, passing-focused event going on here. We'll go through that. I mean, we had 5 quarterbacks all play, predominantly Cohen for the gold and Pine for blue, and then Buckner gets about 15 passes in there as well. But the overall stats, lots of passing, over 400 yards passing for the whole offense. Cohen had 197 yards, Buckner 140, and Drew Pine 146. Now, the completion percentage of all 3 quarterbacks that saw the most action: Cohen 56%, Buckner 66%, and Pine 47%. So Buckner, the true freshman, the fresh recruit, 5-star recruit out of California, has the best completion percentage, but he only had 6 completions out of 9 attempts. But he also had a rushing touchdown and totaled 6 rushing yards. If you look at passer rating, he had a rating of 197. Cohen was second with 101, and then Pine with 93. Also, Cohen and Pine both threw an interception. Now, granted, they had way more attempts, 32 and 23 respectively. So it'd be interesting to see if Buckner had more reps, if he also would have thrown a pick, or would he have thrown a passing touchdown. But the most convincing thing, which I think Notre Dame has going for them, and specifically Tyler Buckner, is the yards per attempt and the efficacy of the passing. Cohen, 6.1 yards per attempt. Pine, 6.3 yards per attempt. Buckner, 15.5 yards per attempt. So significantly better than the other two combined. So I personally think Notre Dame needs to play Tyler Buckner in the fall if he's healthy and he has some resemblance and some grasp of the playbook. Yes, no one wants to start a true freshman, but if your true freshman is A, the most athletic, and B, gives your team the most spark, good things tend to happen. All right. How many quarterbacks, Johnny Manziel, despite the fact that he was probably on cocaine the whole time, but Johnny Manziel won the Heisman Trophy as a freshman, and who's going to argue that he was not electric that season and that it did not help Texas A&M that season? So Notre Dame needs a spark after losing a boatload of guys to the NFL. And But at the end of the day, I don't think Kelly's going to do that. It's not his nature. I've never seen him really. He's very reluctant to play the freshman, especially in a position as important as quarterback. I think he's just going to go with Cohen based off of his experience from Wisconsin and his grasp of the playbook. Cohen's career stats when he was at Wisconsin before transferring to Notre Dame, he threw for a total of 3,200 yards, a 68% completion percentage, a total of 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a touchdown to interception ratio of 2.8, 7.5 yards per attempt, and 11 yards per attempt. So it's pretty okay. It's nothing so great. And he threw a touchdown 5% of all his passes. But it's nothing world beater. It's nothing on the level of what national championship quarterbacks do. I won't compare Cohen to national championship averages for this podcast. But for now, I think he does bring some experience and some pedigree to a very important position on the field. And if you can provide stability and throw a deep ball, something that I don't think Ian Book could really do very well. Respect to Ian Book, and he's now a New Orleans Saint, but we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of time between now and September 5th. One thing that makes me concerned, though, about the spring game, last thing I want to touch on, is this better not be a reflection of what we're expecting to see from the offense in 2021. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about play selection and play calling. Notre Dame had 67 passing attempts and 42 rushing attempts. That's a ratio of about 38% on the run. That's like Mike Leach, Mississippi State, Hawaii Big 12 crap. You don't win national championships if you just if you just run the ball 38% of the time. It's not going to happen. Furthermore, Notre Dame only ran in the spring game for 64 yards, which is really upsetting because our rushing game was the most effective means of scoring last year. I won't get into how many touchdowns we scored, but it was a ton compared to passing. And that was with a 3-year starting quarterback. So, but we threw for 494 yards in the spring game. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock into it, but the 2 touchdowns scored in the spring game, they were from rushing. They were not from passing. So, but 1.5 yards per attempt rushing, it's not going to get it done. So this better not be anything we're going to see in 2021. We better not see it. It better be 55%, 60% running. That is historically what national champions do when as far as play selection goes. So let's talk about the NFL draft. The first Notre Dame player was Liam Eichenberg. He was drafted 42nd overall in the second round and went to the Miami Dolphins. Then Jeremiah Usu-Koramoah was drafted 52nd overall. We're just going to do kind of the big names here from the draft. He's now a Cleveland Brown. And then Ian Book is a New Orleans Saint, drafted 133rd overall in the 4th round. Now, what's interesting about that, Ian Book, there were 8 quarterbacks drafted before him. And I believe 5 were drafted in the first round. And 3 of those guys drafted in the first round were the other 3 starting quarterbacks in the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence, drafted number 1 overall. Mac Jones from Alabama. And then Justin Fields from Ohio State. There were a few other quarterbacks like Zach Wilson from BYU, who was drafted 2nd overall. Kyle Trask was drafted, from Florida. All these very high-profile quarterbacks who put up very impressive numbers were drafted higher and sooner than Book. So why do I bring this up? Not to just, praise these other guys and to, piss all over Notre Dame. No. Is it not Kelly's fault? Is it not Notre Dame's fault? These are very, very good players. They were drafted very high overall in the NFL draft. 6 of Alabama. We could wish it was Notre Dame. 6 of Alabama's players were drafted in the first round. 1 of Ohio State's and 2 from Clemson, all in the first round, 0 from Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, of course, loses in the first round of the playoffs. So is this not Notre Dame's fault? This is not. These are very good players, and I'm not going to talk about recruiting and developing talent and all that stuff, but it kind of makes you feel a little better about how Notre Dame performed last year when their top pick overall was an offensive lineman, a very good offensive lineman in Liam Eichenberg. But it's not Notre Dame's fault when all these other elite players are being drafted overall much earlier in the NFL draft. I don't really watch the NFL at all. I'll catch the game if it's on and I got nothing to do. I will watch the Super Bowl and whatnot. I don't do a fantasy team. I don't get into it. I don't seek solace on Sunday after Notre Dame loses or something. I just don't do it. My time is valuable. I prepare for this podcast, do other stuff with work and home and family life. So, I don't really follow it. But what happened in the NFL draft is very reflective of last year's college football season and the amount of talent these other high-profile teams had that I'm not going to say hurts Notre Dame, but it maybe explains why Notre Dame is still falling short. We don't have an elite quarterback being drafted in the first round. The last quarterback drafted high for Notre Dame, I believe, was Deshaun Kaiser, and maybe before that was Jimmy Clausen. So in the whole time, that Kelly has been there for 10 years, maybe one guy in the first round, maybe second. Again, I don't even know when Deshaun Kaiser was drafted, but is that Kelly's fault? Maybe. He can't develop a good quarterback. I've mentioned that before. We have a transfer from Wisconsin this year and a new true freshman as our quarterback prospects. You look at Alabama, you look at Clemson right now, who do they've got? They've got the 2 best quarterbacks from Southern California, both from the same year that I believe are sophomores. And so maybe those other schools are doing a better job feeding the pipeline and not convincing their players to transfer. I don't know. Is Brian Kelly just unlucky right now? Is Kelly, it's not that what he's doing, it's the fact that Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney are so stupid good. They're ridiculously good. They have like 89, 90% win percentages right now. And do those two just need to retire or something to crack the door open for any other coach to come in there and win the title who's not named Urban Meyer? And the only 2 other guys who have won a title in the last 10 years only did it because they had a Heisman Trophy quarterback, i.e. Joe Burrow from LSU or Jimbo Fisher with Jameis Winston at Florida State. So, but every other time it was Urban Meyer, Dabo Swinney, and Nick Saban. And so that's just reality. Like, does Notre Dame have a Heisman level quarterback? I don't know. I hope so, but we'll just see how it goes. So, but anyway, to change gears here, to distract us since we're going into the off season in the dog days of summer, so to speak, of Notre Dame football, we're just going to just kind of peace out, and then we'll come back in fall camp in in August. Notre Dame has partnered, and they do have a lot of their games on the web, on the Notre Dame Athletics app. I think you can get it on your Fire Stick or whatnot, your iPhone, what have you. I started watching the 2005 Notre Dame versus Tennessee game a couple weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. So I'm going to enjoy that in the off season when I got some downtime, when I'm not catching up on my Netflix and other events going on in my life right now. A few other things here. Notre Dame also scheduled a future game versus Indiana. Your Indiana Hoosiers and Notre Dame will be having a home series in 2030 and 2031, which is something I've been looking forward to for quite some time. The doc, she's from, she got her grad degree from IU. So there's a little bit of IU allegiance in this household here. So that'll be cool in about 10 years, seeing Notre Dame and IU playing here in the state. Also, other big games, home and home games. Notre Dame in 2022 and 2023 is going to be playing against Ohio State. So that's coming up next season, not this coming season. In 2024 and 2025, Notre Dame home and home versus Texas A&M. We haven't played them in a long time, so that'll be good. Go down to College Station to battle the 12th man at Texas A&M. That one of the best places, I think, in all of college football for a game. And then, of course, last but not least, 2028 and 2029, most likely Saban and Kelly will not be the coaches anymore. Hopefully we're still doing this podcast, but it'll be Notre Dame home and home with Alabama. So that's that. Now on Twitter, at @faithful_Irish, I put a tweet out there to see what other home and home series one would like to see play Notre Dame. And I put up a little grid with Oregon, Boise State, Penn State, and Hawaii. Now, personally, I'd like to see Oregon and Boise State, number one, because Oregon is arguably one of the best teams on the West Coast, and they've been very close to winning a title a few years. They've won a few Rose Bowls here and there. They were in the first college football playoff championship game, and they lost to Ohio State. So I think that's a match that needs to happen. It hasn't happened yet. And then Boise State. Now, Boise State is a smaller team, and Chris Peterson is not their head coach anymore. But I love Boise State. One of my high school teammates is Ian Johnson. Ian Johnson is the guy who did the Statue of Liberty, scored the touchdown, proposed to his girlfriend. A good American moment there. I used to block for that guy. So Ian Johnson, there you go. But Boise State, Notre Dame playing at Boise State, I think would be one of the best things ever for college football. You know, you've got Boise State, this kind of smash mouth, flashy team on the West Coast, arguably very good. They've got a great program out there. I have tons of respect for Boise State, and if Notre Dame played them, that would be awesome. And Boise State would probably travel really, really well to South Bend, and they would be on fire for that. And that would get a lot of, I think, press and media, and I think would be good for both schools. So Notre Dame and Boise State would love to see that. Notre Dame, pay attention to me. I'm right here. Notre Dame and Boise State, do it. Penn State, it's Penn State. You know, why would you not have a home and home with them? And then Hawaii. Now, Hawaii, Notre Dame should beat the crap out of them, but it's not so much for that. It's the location. It would be nice to go to a game in Hawaii, but Hawaii is important for recruiting for a couple reasons. When Notre Dame signed Manti Te'o, right before that, they won the Hawaii Bowl, and Jimmy Clausen and Golden Tate just lit everything up in the 2008 season there. But if Hawaii and Notre Dame play each other home and home, it's going to be fantastic for recruiting. You will attract, I believe, a lot more of the Polynesian players from Hawaii or from the West Coast in general, and they will choose Notre Dame just like Prince Kali just did, linebacker for Notre Dame, and of course Manti Te'o in 2009 and whatnot. So I really think that if Notre Dame scheduled a home and home series with those four teams, Oregon, Boise State, Penn State, and Hawaii, that would be really, really good for the program. And it would be exciting, I think, for the fans. You know, let's stop scheduling against Wake Forest and Pitt. And, oh, gosh, can we stop that? Let's get something else more exciting, plus the other big games like Ohio State and Texas A&M in the next couple of years. Next for off-season shenanigans.
Our shenanigans are cheeky and fun.
Yeah, I mean, his shenanigans are cruel and tragic.
Which makes them not shenanigans at all, really. Evil shenanigans.
I swear to God, I'll pistol whip the next guy that says shenanigans.
Hey, Farva, what's the name of that restaurant you like with all the goofy shit on the walls and the mozzarella sticks?
You mean shenanigans?
Oh!
You're talking about shenanigans, right?
Put those away!
So Jordan Johnson transferred. Damn it.
Damn it!
Who's surprised by this? I am not surprised that Jordan Johnson is transferring from Notre Dame. He got hardly any playing time. I believe it was right before the Syracuse game last season. I made the comment that first play of the game, Syracuse is terrible. Book needs to throw a fade, post route, something, a deep ball to Jordan Johnson, freshman. Just get it out there, engage him, and have him go up and get it. First play of the game to that guy. I really think that would be a very good thing. They never did that, so Notre Dame didn't listen to me, and look what happened. Jordan Johnson transferred. It's all your fault, Notre Dame. No, that's probably not why. But seriously, the guy was not getting any love last season, and in the spring game, he got 0 passes. Why would he stay? I mean, he's a 5-star recruit. Why would he stay? He's not getting love. Now, I'm not going to go into all this other stuff. Maybe he wasn't working hard in practice, or the other guys have a better grasp of the playbook than he does, or maybe he was struggling academically. I don't know, but I think the writing was on the wall for him, and he's seeking greener pastures. So, I mean, I wish him luck. I really do. He enters into a long list of other very talented players who have transferred away from Notre Dame for whatever reason. The biggest one I can think of is Greg Bryant. May Greg Bryant rest in peace. But it's that kind of stuff where it's like guys with so much potential that should have so much electricity to contribute to the program, they transfer. And Jordan Johnson is just the latest casualty of that. Next off-season shenanigans, actually very recent, within the last week, Sibo Flemister crashed his 2014 BMW in South Bend. Now, first off, pump the brakes there. This dude's driving a BMW. He's in college and he's driving a BMW. I drove a 1995 Lincoln Mark 8 that my neighbor used to own with like 130,000 miles. It's not as sweet as the 92 Crown Victoria my brother and I drove in high school, but this dude's driving a BMW in college. Hey, Notre Dame money. All right. But anyway, not cool. He crashed his car at like 3 a.m. in South Bend, and then he left the scene of the accident. So I can only go on a limb and connect the dots and think maybe he was having a little bit of cough syrup or something, and so he left so he wouldn't get a DUI. Unfortunately, he may be charged for a misdemeanor and spend up to 180 days in jail. So that's longer than our first game. So I don't know if this is a sign that Notre Dame has arrived because we have high talent that's getting in trouble with the law. That's probably not a good thing, actually. But yeah, off-season shenanigans, gosh, I hope this is not the start of more to come. Guys getting popped with weed and guns in a car. Macy's, please don't have a sale on Nautica gear because guys are going to, get a little handsy with some fresh Nautica gear at the mall. People getting in fights at the backer. Let's not have this be an eventful off-season. Can we have a boring off-season, please? Last but not least here, tickets. So during the spring game, Jack Swarbrick, athletic director, was hinting at opening up the stadium to fans again, the public, alumni, lottery, all that sort of thing. And I really hope that happens. As an alum, I'm usually paying attention to this kind of thing. Lottery for alums go out in July, early July. They'll make an announcement about that. I think if you have season tickets, you'll find out before that too, because you donate more to the university than I do, that's for sure. But let's pray for a full stadium. Let's move through this COVID situation. Let's get fans back in the stadium. And just move forward with this. It's time to bring the fans back. Also, Jack Swarbrick in the spring game had a mullet. Check my Twitter timeline. I make a big red circle around his hair. The dude definitely had a mullet. The Notre Dame's athletic director, maybe he hasn't had a haircut because of COVID, and he's practicing social distancing, and he doesn't trust his wife with a pair of scissors. Ugh, don't read it. Don't read into that. But anyway, maybe we'll see an announcement, and I think around 4th of July in general, I think with baseball and, of course, NFL, that will reveal more of what happens with professional and college sports about bringing fans back and, more people getting vaccinated and all that stuff. But it is 118 days till Notre Dame plays Florida State in Florida State down in Tallahassee on September 5th. So that is all I've got for you guys. This is the random New China Buffet episode of spring football for you all. If you've been following me on Facebook Live, thank you very much. Follow me on Twitter at faithful_Irish. Get the podcast up tonight and out to the rest of the masses via normal podcast channels. So take care, everyone. Go Irish and beat summer.